Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Jon Stewart hosts a special 9/11 tribute tonight at Madison Square Garden called NYC Still Rising After 20 Years, a comedy celebration. I spoke with Stewart in 2014 about his directorial debut film Rosewater, about Iran's imprisonment of journalist Maziar Bahari, who also joined us.
The film is based on my story and inspired by my story, but it's really the story of many people around the world who are going through the same thing every day, and it's the story of their families. So when I was in prison in Iran, I promised myself that if I come out one day, and when I come out one day, I will talk about what is going on to journalists, not only in Iran, but around the world. So I see the film, the red carpet, these interviews as another platform to tell the story. It started with, doing the magazine article, then doing the Daily Show, interviews, the book, the script, the film, and now the publicity surrounding the film. This is just a continuum that started in prison.
Mr. Stewart, what was the impetus for you? I mean, obviously you monitored this story ongoing because it started with, an interview on your show. Right. I mean, I'm sure you read the book as it went along. When was that moment when you knew, hey, we might have a movie here? And not just that, this is going to be a gripping thing for people to watch, but an important story to tell. When was that moment that you knew this was a movie?
It really was more about, Mazi and I had become friendly after he was out of prison and had been coming to New York, and we'd been sort of just having breakfast and talking about his memoir that he was writing and family and politics and all sorts of other things. And I knew it was a relevant story the minute it happened. I mean, even from within the context of the Green Movement, the idea that, these millions of Iranians took to the streets not for overthrow. They weren't looking to overthrow the system. They wanted their votes. They wanted to be citizens and not subjects. So from the get-go, it's a gripping and powerful story and universal. The question was how best to get involved in it, and I think ultimately the more glacial pace of movie making in terms of trying to get other people to write it and direct it became frustrating, and since I think we very much thought this film should be out in our lifetimes, to try and expedite it was really the issue more than anything else.
Being as it was your first, your directorial debut and your first fiction narrative screenplay, right?
That's why I'm going to wear a beautiful gown.
You too? You got to rock the gown?
I am the belle of the ball.
What was your preparation? Did you watch certain filmmakers that directors that have inspired you over the years? Or
in general, the preparation was to really get the story right, to work with Maziar. It wasn't about placing an auteur directorial vision and stamp on it. It was about what's the best way, what's the best iteration of this story, and how can we tell it best so that the audience can be viscerally engaged in it. So it was really about collaborating with Maziar and with Bobby Bukowski, who was the cinematographer, and the actors, more than it was an exercise in stylization or genre.
What was it in Argo? He says you can teach a rhesus monkey to direct, but you and I both know that there's a lot more that goes into it. And I picked up on some cool things I thought you were doing in there. The scenes where he's in the jail cell and he's imagining the figments of the family and helping you get through it.
Right.
You could have cut from him to the family member, cut back, but that would have lost a little bit of the magic of it. There's times where instead of cut, it's a guard steps in front of the frame, covering up the figment of the imagination. When he steps away, he's gone. Right. How do you talk to that a little bit?
There was generally what I did is I would shoot the scene, and then I would shoot the scene. So the scene would be, let's say, between Maziar and his father. So that would be Gael and Haluk Bilginer, who played the father. So we would do the scene, and then we would do the scene without Haluk. So he would play the scene alone in the cell. So it was more to give us the sense that you always try and be cognizant of giving yourself the best opportunities once you're in the edit room, more than anything else. But so that you can make it more gradual. And the idea was that when he was gone, Gael would play the scenes more internally. So it would give you tonal shifts within those scenes, just to give yourself some narrative leeway.
Another thing I noticed that I thought was a pretty cool stylized thing was when he's walking down the street in the beginning. You know, all the images are appearing in the windows of Dr. Strangelove and all the other things. Right. How did that idea come to you?
That came to me many months after we had left Jordan, and we're sitting in a room going, "This isn't working." There were two things that weren't working, so we combined them. It was. I'd like to tell you that it was an incredible feat of directorial insight, but it really was a question of, I have these two elements, which is the backstory of Maziar's family, which is why the memoir is so compelling. His father had been imprisoned by the Shah. His sister had been imprisoned by Khomeini. He was imprisoned by Khamenei. It's these generations lost to, regimes, both Western allied and non-Western allied, that are suppressing people. So it was about trying to, again, execute the best iteration of the story that I could come up with.
The scene when he's outside in like the prison, the yard, he's standing against the wall and there's that little shadow diagonal. It looked a little Shawshank to me when he's in the half light, half dark.
Could have been a little Shawshank. Could have been more that when I went to scout, that was the actual solitary outdoor area of that prison in Jordan. There were actual prisoners on that wing, and we only had 40 minutes, so it was about timing it. When we'd gone on the scout, I had seen the sun go up that, and so I knew I wanted to capture that moment.
Get him over there before the sun left. There.
That's right. Yeah. So it was more that than directorial.
Anything genius. Yeah. Hey, I'm trying to give you credit, man.
That's why I very much appreciate it. Very kind of you, but I should probably let you know.
Exactly. No, thanks for being honest.
No, but I think that also comes from Jon's background in comedy and improvisation, and the fact that he's a very collaborative person, that he had a clear vision of what he wanted to achieve in the film, but he was very open to suggestions and ideas and collaboration, but also he was very adept to accept the realities, because it was a very difficult shoot in Jordan. We had 5 weeks, not much money, it was very hot. It was during the Ramadan. The crew, the Jordanian crew, they were not, some of them were professionals, but many of them were not professionals. So Jon had to just absorb all those challenges and come up with new ideas on the spot. And I think that scene that you see, that my character is in the courtyard, it came from that, because we visited different Jordanian prisons during the Reconnaissance trip, and during the recce he saw the
sun go up.
And then the only thing
being flexible to see it in the moment and catch it. Yeah,
but he had a very difficult time to convince the Jordanian prison authorities that he wanted to shoot that courtyard.
It's got to be here, man.
Because they were saying, no, we have nicer courtyards.
Beautiful courtyard.
Right. Why this one?
Why don't you do it early in the morning? That's more cool. Right. And they were saying, no, I want that courtyard at that time because of that.
But that's it. It's knowing what you want. How much did you consult throughout the whole?
There the whole time.
Yeah. What about in the script writing too?
Same. No, we went back and forth. I would write it, and then I would send him pages, and he would, it was crucial that he be the touchstone of the whole project.
How do you go about maintaining just historical context for the whole thing? I mean, obviously, in a movie, we're going out of it. It's not an interview. We're making a narrative here. So you're going to have antagonists, which are the captors. But it seems like to your credit, you go out of your way to flesh them out as human beings. You speak to a little bit of how you went into weaving in, the history with the Shah, and how a lot of their, in the movie, quote unquote, paranoia is derived from a real place of they've been burned before.
Right, and that's not to say that they wouldn't come up with a pretext to arrest or suppress or those types of things. That being said, the scenario that they concocted, where Maziar was the focal point of Western saboteurs spreading lies through paid journalists and saboteurs on the ground, was a real one that had occurred in 1953 when the United States and Britain had organized a coup against Mossadegh, who was a democratically elected leader. So, was there a historical basis for their theory? Absolutely. Was it in any way being executed at that time with Maziar Bahari? No. And it's a convenient excuse for regimes like that to play upon those past prejudices and events.
Exactly. Well, I just think it's great that you go to lengths to show that well-rounded context and can nuance it that way.
Very important for the film as well, in order to not make it like, typical Hollywood film that, you don't see any shades of gray. Jon didn't want to make Transformers. And it was, in order to humanize the characters and make them more believable, you had to give them some sort of background, and you have to give them some sort of legitimacy.
Right.
So the characters worked, and that's where that scene comes from.
Right.
And knowing your background, how much did you connect with the theme? I mean, technology is a huge theme, not only with Twitter, but the little boy on the cell phone, this little tool in a hand.
2009 demonstrations in Iran was the first social movement that used social media, mainly Twitter and Facebook, in order to gather information, share information, and allow people to mobilize themselves in a social movement. We saw the same thing happening in the Arab countries, in Ukraine, in Hong Kong, in Brazil last summer, in Ferguson, in this country. So I think social media is one of the characters in the film. And one of the reasons that the Iranian regime really panicked after the demonstrations, when millions of people came to the streets, was because of the effect of social media. They did not know what was going on. Basically, these are very 20th century regimes who are used to analog technology. That they can shut down newspapers, they can shut down shortwave radios, jail people, but when it comes to digital technology, internet, satellite television, and social media, they don't know what to do. So they resort to the same 20th century methods of suppression.
For sure. And I think we got to wrap up here, but one more question. So now that you've had a taste of directing, what's the path forward for Jon Stewart? I mean, you've had outside offers come before, even recently with Meet the Press. So, how do you see going forward in terms of continuing, if it's something you want to do? Do you want to continue to make, a second and a third if you find the proper topics?
I like bossing people around in any context, whether it be film or television, or maybe even open up an ice cream shop, as long as I can be in charge, as long as I'm the manager.
And he just got me a ticket to North Korea.
Yeah,
I was just going to see if we could have a sequel. It's going to be Maziar and Dennis Rodman. We're gonna have the two of them now. It's more of got a buddy cop vibe.
Are you going to have to dye your hair for that?
No. We're going to let Rodman be the eccentric.
But you do plan to direct more?
Oh, I don't have plans, at the present time. But, I guess I don't view it so much as a separate entity as other things. I sort of view it as a continuum of work. There is, even within the darkest of stories, there is humor, there's absurdity, there's all kinds of things.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks
Thank
for coming.
you very much.
Thanks. Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.